there. Thanks everyone for tuning in wherever you are. It's quite different doing these Zoom things, isn't it? Because I don't know where you are. You could be in your kitchen or your living room. I've been banished to the sitting room because I lost out to other family members getting the best spot upstairs in the penthouse. But it's quite cool because you can reach loads of people this way, and you could be anywhere. Although I can't obviously see your reactions. So if you're kind of yawning or chewing bubblegum or something, I can't tell that. I just have to plow on. Actually, I did a Zoom recently where I think there was only like 3 people, and I think one of them was like the webmaster checking the stream. So you just don't know who's there. But I can see now there's like almost 50 for this one. So that's great. There's basically 2 things I want to do today. And one is to obviously talk a bit about Mojo, as we're saying there. Mojo is mobile journalism. So that's using your smartphone to film stories for news journalism reports, which is what I do. So speak a bit about that, explain why that can empower you if you're a journalist, especially if you're starting out, how it can make opportunities for you. So I'll speak about that. And this isn't like a full practical course on how to do it, but maybe just give you some ideas about how I do it that might be useful for you. And then the other thing is, because I know there's a lot of people on this who want to get into journalism or to get ahead in journalism, I'll just talk a bit about my kind of journey, and hesitate to call it a career because I don't feel like it's that structured or well managed, but how I've kind of got on. And I've been thinking quite a lot about it for this, and I've come up with 5 sort of lessons, bits of wisdom from me that I can try and pass on to you. And I'm going to do me speaking, but also a PowerPoint, just because that's quite a good way for me to share stills and also videos. And as you know, these Zoom things, sometimes there's a bit of faff going between the 2. And I'll probably keep it on the PowerPoint for quite a lot because you don't want to see me speaking all the time. But the first piece of wisdom, the first thought that I want to pass on is kind of, I'm going to use this as a prop. I had a dig around and I found this as well as this. These are phones that I had in the sort of mid-2000s, which is roughly the time that I was starting out as a journalist. And the lesson, I think, if you look at them, that looks like it's been found on the moon or something. But that's what I had at the time, and I thought that was really cutting edge. And it had a camera, 2-megapixel camera. I thought that was just amazing in the future. But my lesson I'd say to you is, don't have too fixed an idea, even if you know you want to be a journalist, and this applies for other things too, of what particular kind of journalist you want to be. Because especially now with the technology changing so fast, you don't know what's going to be possible in the future. When I was starting out in the sort of mid-2000s, because phones were like this, I could never have dreamed in a million years that 10, 12 years later, I would be filming reports on one of these things, a phone. But that's exactly what I do. And so the rig I have, which I'll be talking about, is this. And that's my iPhone up here. So yeah, basically, first bit of advice is kind of, if you have an idea roughly of what you want to do, set sail in the general direction towards it, but don't be too prescriptive about what it needs to be, because you might not know, nobody might know what those roles could be in the future. So I'm going to play my first video now, because video is probably how I express myself best. And by the way, that's a picture of me about 5 years ago doing Mojo, and I was starting out. So I was using the tripod back then, and I'm in a slightly stupid sort of philosopher pose as I do it, which is not my normal pose. And that's my first thought. And this is a story that this is my most recent feature story, really, that I work with a business unit as a video innovation journalist, but basically a shoot edit who's doing original stories that I find. And this is something that I filmed with this exact rig that I showed you, plus a 360 camera, which I'll also show you. And for this story, you have to find the story, find the contributors, just do everything yourself, because when you're a video journalist like me, gone are the days of it being like a 3 or 4 person operation. You just go yourself and do the story. So we'll just have a little watch of this one. At least one of these guys is wearing a wig. This expert has to guess who has one on.
I feel like he has one on, but that blend is epic. The other two, possibly 50-50, but I feel like the curl pattern is slightly different. This is my knowledge. Girls' wigs and males' wigs are totally different. No way!
Later we'll reveal the wig wearers, but first, what exactly is going on here? These two men are worried about hair loss. So they've come to a small business in a South London industrial estate to try a technique that's proved popular in America. Sometimes known as man weaves, this involves attaching natural hair to the head using adhesives before a specially trained barber blends it in. Stefan is an influencer and model. He's known as the UK's most right-swiped man on Tinder.
I can't believe it. Look like a new man.
So if you meet someone on Tinder now, are you going to tell them you've had this done, or
no, not at all. I'll just tell them I've grown it out. I'll just say I've grown my hair out. I've got to change all my pictures over now.
Our judge owns a hair salon and runs wig workshops for women.
There's so many memes and there's so many videos that they say like, oh, women are so fake, just take them swimming on the first date and you'll see what they really look like. And now it's so ironic because these are all guys that are making these jokes. They're now wearing wigs just like us.
Okay. We're sorted.
Who are you most excited to show it to?
My missus, actually.
This business thinks it has found a gap in the market by focusing on fashion-conscious young black men who maybe can't afford to spend thousands on transplant surgery, but will pay hundreds for a monthly subscription to keep these so-called hair units looking sharp. The team think they can make wigs cool, accepted.
In black culture, style has always been a thing that's really important to us. And we care about how we look, we care about how we present ourselves. So hair loss is viewed with some stigma.
There are fewer transplant options for Afro-Caribbean hair, especially if you want to wear your hair short. There's also a greater risk of scarring from the procedure.
We've had guys who've come to us after a year of having transplantations and they've not been effective.
Now it's time for the reveal. Okay, can the people who had hair unit wigs on put their hand up, please?
Wow! Okay, wow. Your hair's really dense in the middle and the sides are, yeah, not as curly. So I was like, okay, cool, this must be a unit because it doesn't really match that, but that's actually your hair. Yours, I kind of knew because that wave was actually too perfect.
A year ago, we started saying, how can we test this? So my team shaved off all my head and said, listen, let's put it on you and see if it works. We did that and I'm using it now.
So what do you think your female friends would say to this?
I think a lot of females would be like, no, that's like not on. Wigs haven't been socially acceptable for the longest time. It's only become normalized for women. So for men to do something that women already are a bit like, oh, it's not a wig, it's my real hair, I think that would be like quite shocking. But I definitely think it is something that will eventually become normalized.
So I'll just come out of that for a sec. So all of that report basically was filmed with this rig. And what I like about it is when you're smartphone filming, it's really light and nimble. You've got everything on here and it's quite natural as well. So you could hear me asking questions from behind the camera, just going around like this. I'll speak a bit more in detail later on about how you do the recording. But for me, the easy way to explain it is there's limitations against a normal broadcast camera, but it's a bit like driving a car in automatic rather than manual. It's a bit easier to use. And for me, that frees me up to be a bit more creative and think about other things when I'm filming. Let me go back to what I said with my sort of journey again. So when I started out in journalism and at the BBC, which was, this is roughly kind of like 2003 to 2007, something like that. I first started working on this program called Hardtalk, which is still goes on today. So it's on News Channel and BBC World, and it's a one-on-one interview program. So when I joined, it was Tim Sebastian was the main presenter, and now it's Stephen Sacker. In this picture, that's Gavin Esler, because he used to sometimes present as well. So we did, basically, it was an education in one part of news, which is how to film a one-on-one interview. And mainly it was politicians, to be honest, but I looked back at some pictures that I kept, and it was some of the people like Dolly Parton who we took pictures of. You probably wouldn't want to take a picture next to a politician. So here's a very blurry picture of what it was like going on a shoot. So basically, I joined as a researcher, but quite quickly became a producer, which is quite easy to do. Research, by the way, is a big part of the job for a one-on-one half-hour interview program, because you're basically finding out you're working out the questions you're going to put to the interviewee, and you're working closely with the presenter to do that. But in terms of the practicalities of filming, all the time I was kind of learning about how does news work, how is it made. And for an interview like this, mostly we'd be in the studio where the cameras and things are set up. But when we went on location, which was more interesting, we'd go out with a camera crew, and it would take them about 90 minutes to set up, get the lights right, work out where everybody was going to sit down. And it was very obviously staged and kind of set up. And I definitely noticed that it suited people more who were used to the artificiality, who were politicians who'd done thousands of interviews, or an author who's on a book tour and had done a million interviews as well. Definitely didn't really suit people who weren't used to the media. So I kind of felt two things at the time. One was definitely I wanted to be creative and I wanted to film, but I also realized that when you work as a producer, it's quite a funny job. It's a bit like being an estate agent. You're kind of pestering other people to do things all the time, rather than necessarily doing something yourself. You're at the center of the web. So you'd be working with the camera crews, and you'd be saying to them, can you get a picture of this? Can you change the shot to that? Can you make sure this is in the background? And I just thought, what if I could film that myself? I'd much prefer that. I love the idea of filming. And likewise, when you then took the rushes that you'd filmed and went to the edit suite, you'd be sitting, say like I am now, in an edit suite on the shoulder of the editor, and you'd be having conversations like, can you put this in? Actually, no, can you take that out? Actually, no, put it back in again. And I always felt like if only I could do that, I'd love to learn again. And I'd quite like to have that control myself and not bother other people asking them to do things, just do it myself. And one thing that's definitely changed since I've started that's really good is that in the past it was quite difficult to move between different roles, that you were either an editor or a producer or a reporter or a camera person, a sound person. And each one of those people were absolutely brilliant at their roles. They were supreme experts. But as the kind of technology changed and the cameras got a bit cheaper, there was a willingness to let some people blend the roles a bit more. So I've got lots of friends who are editors who wanted to film, quite a few people who are producers like me who wanted to film and edit. And what you get more and more of is shoot edits. So I started to learn on cameras like this, which I'll just pop out to show it to you big screen. So this is a Sony Z7, and the BBC is quite good, and I'm sure other big journalism organizations as well, at giving you some training if you're keen to learn. So I learned on this, and I was, pleased as punch to be able to operate a camera. And I just thought, wow, this is amazing. I can actually film. And of course, you have to do quite a few sessions to get better at it, and then go out and actually film. But you get to learn all the principles of filming on these cameras. And I think at the time, it was on Strictly Come Dancing, they would get, for example, researchers or junior producers to film the dancers in the practice rehearsal sort of stage. And they knew that if they could teach them the basic principles of filming, because these cameras were cheaper, lighter, and a bit easier to use, they could get rushes that way. So certainly in that time, in the kind of mid to late 2000s, more people were starting to film. One other lesson to pop in at this point, because this is something else I learned when I was at Hardtalk. I think when most people think of journalists as a job, they'll think of I don't know, Sophie Rayworth or Hugh Edwards, or the kind of the news presenter at the desk, or the other thing most people think about is the war reporter giving a piece to camera while the missiles fly around them. But those are just two quite visible kind of iconic roles. There's so many different roles in journalism that could be right for you, and that might be you know, a brilliant producer who's great at organizing. It might be these days, because there's so many extra options now with digital, you might be somebody who's great at coming up with podcast ideas. You could be a podcast host. You could be a great researcher and just enjoy doing that and not doing anything else. It's not just those roles you think about when you speak to the average person on the street about what it means to be a journalist. And personally, what I found was that my skill set wasn't someone who would be certainly not the kind of battlefield journalist. I'm not a very fast person who works well under pressure, who wants to be the first to get the news line out, and thrives in the busy newsroom or on the front line, quickly filing stuff back, beating the competitors. That sort of didn't really suit my skill set. What I found what I preferred was a bit more current affairs, a bit more features, having the room to come up with your own ideas, your own original ideas, and also then to kind of think of original treatments and have a bit more time to do that. So that I sort of realized I could learn to film, learn to edit, come up with original ideas, and then start to move in that kind of form of news. And luckily, because digital was taking off at the same time, because remember in the mid 2000s at the BBC, the website was a tiny operation. It was sort of tucked away in not exactly a cupboard, but one section of an obscure floor. No one knew at the time how big and important it was going to be. Whereas 10 years later, we're in a digital newsroom and digital's right at the center of it. But when digital came about, it gave opportunities for people like me and others who'd learned how to film and edit, because no one would have ever said to me, do you want to go out and film an item for the 6 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news? Because they've got camera crews who'll do that a lot better than me, more reliable. But they might ask me to go and film something for an online feature and just say, look, if it works, we'll put it in the feature. That would be great. If it doesn't, no stress. So that became a great way to learn and to just sort of slowly build up skills, which hopefully is going to, if I remember my presentation right, take me to one of my next points. Different kind of journalism. Yeah. Journalism is a bit like snakes and ladders. So if you think of a job like accountancy or being a teacher or a lawyer or an engineer or something like that, you probably have quite a smooth trajectory in how you might expect to progress in your career. But definitely what I found, even in a big place like the BBC, but also probably even more so if you're freelance, you can be going up and then all of a sudden the rug's pulled from under your feet, a department closes, a job closes. It's not necessarily your fault and you go down again. But then around the corner, you get a lucky break and you're up. So you've got to really develop a very thick skin, have an understanding that when something doesn't go your way, it's not always your fault. And if you hold out, hopefully things will improve again, but definitely be braced for that. And in terms of how that fits in with my experience, so around the time of leaving Hardtalk and just starting to learn a bit about filming, I moved to a really good department of great people called On Demand, where it was like the engine room of digital news in the kind of growing digital newsroom. And I met great people there, and there was good elements to the job, but quite a lot of it in the early days of video wasn't very creative. And it would be literally marking the in and out points of news packages running on the bulletins and kind of laboriously putting them onto the website. And it was on a 24-hour news shift system. So you'd have 6 a.m. starts once every 8 weeks. You'd kind of go in at 8 p.m. and leave at 6 a.m. And for me, because I was in my early 30s at that time, that coincided with having children. So I had a period of I remember taking my lunch break at 2 a.m. so I could go home for an hour and like try and help with the baby and then come back to work. So there was definitely times like that where I thought, have I made the right decision? This is, it's not amazing money. It's not creative, but you've got to hold out the belief that things can change quite quickly in journalism and it isn't a smooth ride all the way. Just to give a quick recap of what it is I do. So I should probably explain actually from that. So yeah, so from that on-demand team, they also had a team that made features, and gradually over probably 3 or 4 years, I was able to pitch my own original films, which were commissioned by the website. So I got more and more experience doing that. Eventually, I got a job with the technology team. So I was like a VJ, a video journalist, shoot, edit, making features for online for the technology team. Then I moved to business, and I've moved around a little bit, and now I've got this role, video innovation journalist, but basically doing the same thing. So gradually I moved into that. But the way things work now with digital, and this is why I like it, I will film stuff, and my first thought isn't the TV package, it's the last thought. I can film story any way I want, any kind of length. Like that last video we watched was, I don't know, probably more than 3 minutes long. Whereas if you're doing something for a news package, it's very fixed and traditional. It's kind of 2 minutes and it follows quite a formula. So doing these digital films, you can really let your hair down and try different things. But of course, we're here to talk about Mojo and film making with your phone as well. So this is the next kind of transition. So if you imagine you're filming with this thing, and at first I was delighted, that's what I wanted to do, felt like a real filmmaker. But after a while, what you realize when you're working on your own, you're carrying around this really heavy kit. And it's not just the camera, it's all the batteries, the spare lenses, it's the metal tripod that digs into your shoulder. And every time you go out and do a story, it's like you're like going on holiday, burdened down with all your stuff, except that you're not going to a hotel, you're going to some place to film where they kind of think TV happens by magic, and they don't take account of the fact that it's just you, and they'll sort of send you around the building and say, oh, you have to film this guy because it's important that you speak to him, but he's going at 2 o'clock, so let's go over there and do that. And there's no lift, but just carry all the stuff. And then you've got to put everything out your bag and in your bag, and you're worried about, are your batteries running out? Have you forgotten a memory card? It's just way, way too stressful. So I thought, I want to be more like a radio journalist. I want to simplify things, and I want to be nimble. So about the time of 2005, it was the iPhone, 2015, it was the iPhone 5. By the way, I think someone asked a question. I use an iPhone 8 at the moment, so I don't get the most, I'm not even using the most up-to-date phones, but it was the iPhone 5, and that filmed HD. And that meant that really that was a big step up, and you could imagine using it to do TV reports. And by the way, I just tweeted from my account some blogs I've written for the BBC Academy, and that details a lot of the kit I used and talks a bit more about how I experimented with using the phone in the first place. So the picture you see on the screen, basically, recently I went away on a Mojo filming trip, and everything I needed to produce reports that could have been, I went to Stockholm, it could have been filed from there and run on TV. Everything that I needed for that fitted in that bag, including my MacBook that I edit on, and I could send it over the internet. I could send the report that way. Even my kind of, 2 days worth of boxer shorts and socks and a spare jumper or whatever is in that bag as well. So it just makes you so nimble and free. You can be a kind of fly in the wall as you go around, and the cameras now on the phones are so good that it's possible. The other thing I found though doing this, so this is another really early one. So my current rig looks nothing like this. I wouldn't film this way now, but this was about 5 years ago. I thought, not only is this good for me because I'm not weighed down and by all the kit, and it's just, life is just easier in a sort of lazy way. What I found was that the interviewees were a lot better as well. So this is a guy I always remember because he came across as a really charismatic guy. He ran a manga comic shop in Glasgow, and I was doing a story about it, and he did a really good interview this way, as you can see. But he said to me afterwards, he came up and he said, oh, Dougal, you don't know how nervous I was. I haven't slept for 2 days before doing this interview. I've never done a BBC interview, never done a media interview. But when you got your phone out, all the kind of fears evaporated, and I was so relieved I couldn't tell you. And that really sort of stayed with me and made me realize that this isn't just about me and the benefits for me, it's about the other person. And I've tried to make the setup more free since then, because you can see in that one, I've got the tripod out, a small tripod, I don't even use a tripod now. And I've kind of hardwired him, which I don't like to do either these days. But just the fact it's a phone, it's a familiar object, meant that he was very happy. And of course, these reports, by the way, were running online and on social media, but also running on television as well. It's perfectly good footage, good sound. This was the first time I saw the kit. It was at the BVE trade show, and I saw that little kind of, it looked like a computer game console, and I thought that's quite cool. I want to get one of them. And I think that's when I first got really excited by the idea of it. And I could see that it was very nimble with the microphone there ready to plug in. And just another point to make, that with the phone, what I find is the picture is excellent. The cameras, you know, they've been working on them for so long, the picture quality is rarely a problem. But of course, a phone is, in terms of the sound, is designed for someone making a call like this. So the mic here is very good. It's a good close mic, but it's not good for doing a TV style interview with someone, which is why you have to buy some kits to make sure you're capturing good sound. Here's another picture from the early days where basically, again, I was using the phone filming there of a reporter, Joe Lynham, but I was kind of still really trying to replicate the way that I'd learned to film on the big cameras. So using a tripod, and I had like a gun mic on top, but also another mic, a tie mic that we put onto her. And then I think we used nice natural light in that interview. But I was still doing things in quite a traditional way. But that was filming the first report I'd ever done on a phone that ran on, for me, that ran on TV. And I think BBC London ran that one. It was about finding a new use for the an Olympic site. So there's been a bit of time about film, so I don't want to be just me talking too much. This was, I think, the first proper little feature film I ever did using my phone, and I was just on a lunch break round New Broadcasting House, and as I walked back a sort of not my normal route near Warren Street, and I saw this weird shop and a woman inside, and I thought that sounds interesting, so I went in, chatted to her, and decided to make a sort of business film about it. So this was all shot on the I don't know which iPhone I had at the time. I think it was iPhone 6.
Customers have come back who bought stuff 20 years ago that I made, and they still come in wearing the clothes. You know, environmentally sound way, it's better to buy fewer things. That's what we advocate. Buy one good thing that you love and wear to death. And every one of these pieces here takes a machinist who's been on the machines for 40 years a day to make. The competition is the high street and cheaper. So if people are going to pay, it has to be radically different. And hopefully they'll still be able to be worn in 50 years. Each row, because of the French seams making it stronger, the machinist has to know what she's doing to actually, when she's sewing it, to match it. All the check matches, can you see?
And that's expensive.
Very expensive. Slow, one at a time. Like 3 or 4 rows of stitching on each row. That particular garment is probably 3/4 to a day's work. As somebody who's been machining 40 years deserves to earn £10 an hour. Mrs. Smith, who's never sewn anything or doesn't know much, you know, they find it more difficult to put their hand in their pocket.
Do you wish that more people could afford it?
Yes, I do. A lot of people who really love it can't afford it. The people like me, other artisanal people. The other sad thing is people who have enough money and just buy it because they have enough money and they're not going to really wear it.
They don't appreciate it.
Yeah. So that's, you know, but you can't control that.
Slow fashion is for rich people at the moment.
At the moment it is, and also the problem is all the Primarks and these type of stores have given people a false sense of actually how much work goes into garment making. If you make garments and you know about this industry, you know many lives have been compromised to get that out there at £20.
I think I can just scroll back to this one, but haven't seen that for ages. I made that 5 years ago. But something I remember at the time was that she was a very, very nervous contributor, and when you're filming someone who's nervous, I find they react in two different ways. Either they can't stop talking, so they just kind of, that's their nervous reaction. And they can't sort of stop, and it almost interrupts the filming because they can't stop talking. And then there's also people who go like red and can come out and kind of hives or a rash around the neck when they get very nervous. And she was, you could actually see her going all red when I was filming. So she's someone who was so nervous that even certainly just the fact I was filming on a phone didn't help. But partly that's because at this time I was still using a tripod and doing a very formal setup. And as you can see, she's got a microphone there, and that was plugged in under her smock thing. But what was interesting as well was that she really started, she didn't say very much when I did the sit down interview. She was too nervous to really be coherent. But when we filmed the bit when she's talking about the garment workers, where is that? Yeah, these kind of bits on the steps. I just basically, we were chatting at that point and I whipped out the phone and I kind of showed her that I was filming. And I think I probably said something so she knew we were being filming, but she was just much more relaxed when I had the phone out and I didn't have the tripod and everything else. That's when she was really being a lot looser and more lucid. And that was another lesson of how the phone can really free people up and make them less intimidated. Yeah, okay, time for another thought. Because a lot of people watching this, I guess, are starting out and maybe you want to get ahead in journalism or whatever it is you want to film in. If you think about it this way, in a newsroom, if you've been kind of studying somewhere, doing a master's, or even at school, you're in a sort of film club at school, you've probably got lots of people who are nurturing you, helping you, and you've got quite a lot of time to do things. But when you go into a busy newsroom, everyone is, it's relentlessly hard work, working towards deadlines. And although you have mentors and you do have some structures there to help you, it's not the same as these previous environments you've been in. So if you imagine, if you say to someone, I've got this great idea I want to film, will you give me a chance? Will you give me time with an editor? Can I go out with a film crew? You're quite unlikely to be able to get that time. But if you can film and even edit yourself, and maybe you want to do that on a smartphone, which you can, that means if you go to that same editor or commissioner and say, either, look, I've filmed this bit myself, you can see what my idea looks like. Do you think it's any good? You're more likely to convince them. Or if you're even more confident and you can just say, here's the idea, I can film, I can make this. Will you just simply give me the time to go off and do this, and I'll do the story. So I've seen a lot of people at BBC, younger than me, coming in who had the filming and editing skills, and they've really taken off and done really well for themselves. Like just thinking Ben Zan, for example, who I worked with for a bit, and I think he won one of the Schofield RTS Awards. So I remember when he came in, he was straight away, he could film his own stuff, edit it, put it on YouTube. He was doing all kinds of filming all the time. So it just gives you all these creative opportunities. That's a reason to do it. And my other tip on that is, if you're learning to film, also learn to edit, because one skill reinforces the other. And if you're editing and you have to fix the mistakes that you did filming, then you're much less likely to do it next time, because you know the time involved to fix it. Let me quickly go through the kit now. So I've kind of showed it to you, but this is it. So I use an iPhone 8, but you can use any iPhone. You can also use an Android. It doesn't really matter what kind of phone it is, as long as it's a modern one. As I mentioned, the camera, the picture tends to be very good quality. It's the sound that you really have to think you need to improve if it's going to be broadcast quality. So in this picture, I've got my microphone there, which is, I just bought my own one. It's about 10 years old. It's a condenser mic, broadcast mic with three pins, high quality. You could use it for like a radio documentary. And you'll see there's a sort of box connecting it so that it goes into the lightning port of my phone. That one's made by Rode. It's called IXLR. It's about £100. But there's lots of other different makes that do the same thing, and you get ones that will connect to an Android. And I have about 3 or 4 different mics in case one breaks. But the point is, you can't just use a microphone that comes with your phone. You have to get a good one. The only time I use the mic on my phone is if I'm doing sometimes a voiceover for a report. It is very good for that because it's designed for those close recordings. And the other thing is, you can see I've put the phone on a rig. You don't want to be holding it with your hands. It's too unsteady. And also you need to be able to add things like the microphone, or sometimes I might have a light. So there's some mounts around the rig. But this rig is made of plastic, the one I use. Lots of different ones. I'm not saying this one's the best by any means, but I like to use a light one. I like to have the phone at eye level and the microphone roughly at kind of mouth level. And I just find I can hold it really steady. And that's why I got rid of the tripod, because I found with these light rigs and a light phone, I can hold it easily in position. And when I'm editing, you can kind of do a bit of stabilization if there's a bit of shake. But in practice, I never even really have to use that at all. I can do it very steady with this. This is what a screen looks like on Filmic Pro, but I'm just going to quickly try something now. So I think I can screen share this, and I'll show you what it looks like. Let's see. So in a second, you should see what my phone is seeing. Yeah. Just wait for it to catch up. Yeah. So there's lots of different apps you can use. I've got lots of different ones, but Filmic Pro is a good one that lots of people use, which is a paid-for app. And here's my screen. So I haven't got any mates here or any kind of humans to film. So I've got Mr. or Mrs. Mop here, just as a kind of example. If I was filming someone. So this box here, that's focus. So it kind of automatically focuses where you put it. If you want to lock the focus, you touch the screen and lock it. Likewise with exposure, as I move it around, it's kind of exposing based on that mark. And I can also lock it like that. On the sides, you can open these reticles and fine tune it that way. Likewise with focus, you can do that. But I mean, there's actually lots of sophisticated things you can do with it, the same as you'd get on a good DSLR camera. So I used to use a C100, C300, and you'd have things like the zebras and things that tell you exposure and focus. But to be honest, I never use these on the camera, because my whole idea is I want to keep the filming process as simple as possible. So some people might like those, but for me, I don't need it. The other big reason that we use this instead of the native camera app is that, as you can see, I'm speaking and there's a sound meter at the bottom. And I put headphones on. I'd been monitoring the sound normally if I was filming. But as I said, for me, it's like filming it's like driving a car automatic. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. And the other good thing actually is that your viewfinder in effect is the phone. And of course, the screen on the phone is an excellent screen, very high resolution. And I've learned to basically trust the screen. If it looks good on here, obviously not this shot, this is like as bad as it gets, weird as it gets as well. But if it looks good on this screen, I can trust it. The only time that's a problem, and this is quite rare in Britain, is if it's really strong sunlight and you're struggling to see the screen. But I do have a little hood that you can put over it, and that kind of protects it. So anyway, that's just a little look about what it looks like. So one of the good things about Zoom that you can do that. So let me go through a few more. Yeah. So most of the time, because I'm filming on my own, it's quite hard to show what it looks like when I film, but I look back through the rushes, and sometimes I ask someone else to film something. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like when I film.
Generation, we are now really concerned about everything with the climate change and the waste of food. If we want to try to make something better to this situation in the future, we need to participate.
So there I am filming. Again, you can see in that one, I'm using a different microphone. That's a Shure MV88 Plus, which actually gets surprisingly good sound quality. And that distance that I was there, that got really good sound quality, and you can control the kind of direction of sound that it gets. And the other good thing I like about filming this way, this is obviously pre-COVID, is that it's kind of quite a natural distance that you stand from someone in order to film them and get the kind of newsy mid shot. So it does feel quite natural speaking to someone. Here's another example. So to get this shot, I was using a 360 camera. So I just went back to the rushes to find this. Again, you can see me filming.
I invoke trust in customers, and that trust turned into business. I remember one specific German customer who, even though he had the option to buy,
normally I'm making a better
it's actually
emotional
one end of the
connection
Silk Road. There's a
with
huge trading
UE
culture
than that,
there.
but he was a very confident guy. This is quite an interesting one. This is an example of filming in the time of COVID. So I've adapted my method a little bit. Very rarely do I film inside at the moment, but on this particular day, it was raining very hard outside for a long period of time. So we ended up filming inside, windows open, and to keep the 2 meter distance, I put my microphone on a selfie stick, as you can see.
But what we
it's the 360 camera captured this footage again.
Of the clear plastic screen that are going up throughout thousands of.
And there's some guy in the background annoyingly filming it vertical.
And we've taken that concept and made it.
You'll see what it looks like.
When you're wearing the tube, you know, you feel encapsulated. You feel much safer.
So I filmed.
And, you know,
I filmed that in 4K. Normally I film in HD, so I'm filming it in extra resolution because I knew I was further away, that I could crop in a bit and not lose resolution. And the sound was good as well. So yeah, but that's all. So many compromises because of COVID, and right now we can't really film, certainly in people's houses. I can't for the stuff I'm doing, which means you have to film outside. And then I'm checking the BBC weather app all the time, and there's been loads of times when I've had to film outside. It's raining, so you've got to find a sheltered place outside, and it's just like a kind of new nightmare. I mentioned a bit before about how the close microphone on the phone is very good for recording voiceovers and things. So that's some examples of that. The phone is also very good for getting surprising angles because it's so light. So there I've got it like in an office with the tripod as high as it goes. And, you know, that would be a bit precarious if it was a very heavy camera, but that's okay with a very light phone. Though I don't actually bring out a tripod now. Then again, you can use it a bit like a sound boom and get shots from above. Oh, I've actually got some videos. Okay, you can see what this looks like. This is the kind of shots it would make coming up. Yeah. So just kind of surprising angles. Because obviously my phone, I mean, is much lighter than my spare batteries from my old cameras. So you can do all these extra things. Here's another one, filming from inside a fridge. That same guy. I didn't count on the exposure changing because the blue light comes on in the fridge, but I'll quickly show this. This is another thing you can do. So I've sort of developed my own style of making reports, and even for when I'm doing them for TV, because I'll do a TV version as well at the end. I'm not very good at doing piece to cameras, and they feel a bit I feel quite cheesy doing them. I hate them. But I sometimes like to be on camera to ask a question and sort of take ownership of the report a bit. So to do that, you might film a setup shot that shows you arriving to meet the person. And to do that on a smartphone, all I would do is have it on a tripod or some kind of stable surface, put it onto selfie mode so it's pointing forward, looking at the camera with record on, make sure that your head's not being chopped off or something, and just a few times walk in and you can film yourself arriving. And then, yeah, pretend to look at something with less than convincing acting sometimes. So yeah, kind of arrival shot. But very useful for reports when you're introducing this new character that you're going to hear from. Let me just go through some of the drawbacks of just filming on the phone, because obviously there are lots of drawbacks, and there's lots of people who've tried using filming with a phone and they've just said, no, it's not for me, and they've gone back to broadcast cameras, and of course it's not right for everyone. For me it works because I'm doing features, but I can imagine if you're in news gathering and you're filming really fast-paced things, a war zone, a courtroom appearance, a politician suddenly coming out of a seminar room, then the phone's probably not the right tool, because you need to, the main thing is it doesn't have zoom, unlike the big cameras I was showing you before, which have excellent zoom and they can film things very far away. You can't do that on the phone, which is why the phone isn't good for wedding photography or, you know, wildlife photography. You've got to physically get close to the thing happening, which is usually fine for my kind of business and technology feature stories. So yeah, you are hacking a phone. It's not designed first and foremost to be a broadcast camera. So sometimes things will go wrong. You've got to have backup plans, different ways of doing things. people often say to me, oh, the memory must be a problem, but honestly, that's never been a problem for me. On my iPhone 8, I've got 250 gig. I have about 4 projects on the go before I wipe one. And on top of that, I've got my personal photos and stills and videos, and I don't run out of space. But what I do have a problem with is battery life. My iPhone 8 now is about almost, I think it's 2 years old. And the battery does, after half a day's filming, the battery is getting to like 10%. And when I see the battery get to 10%, I always stop now. And because I know problems can start to happen, gremlins in the system when it's below 10%. So it's better to leave it at that point. And what I do is I've kept my old iPhone 6 and I keep it fully charged in my kit bag. And I just start to use that instead because it's got the same apps and everything will work on it. Obviously on a phone, you can't just change the battery, and that's a big drawback. You've got to remember things because you're hacking the phone. You've got to put it into airplane mode. You need to remember to do that, and it's quite easy to forget. Sounds really stupid, but because it's a touch screen, you've really got to make sure that the time code is going and that you've really hit record. It's not like a proper a broadcast camera where there's a physical button with haptic feedback and you know you've pressed record. On a phone, it's a little tap on a screen. And I'm not above saying that it has happened to me before, that I thought I was recording and I wasn't. But I'm very careful now to make sure the time code is going up. Legs are your zoom, as I said. There's no fast focus. I do have a couple of lenses I can put onto the phone, which will make it kind of ×2 or ×4 focus, but they're quite slow to change, so it's not the same as a broadcast camera. And the other thing is with sound, you can't record different channels of sound. It's just one. You mix the sound all together when it comes into the phone. So if you were doing an interview like the Hardtalk ones we saw, you can't have 2 separate speakers and then edit it separately. But the benefits are it's nimble and lightweight. As you saw, my small bag, being able to go around people getting their hair cut, fly on the wall and just throwing in questions and surprising angles and shots you get easily. I definitely do find again and again, it's not intimidating to people. The only time I ever have a problem with the fact I'm using a phone is when, on the rare occasions I have to get vox pops, which I don't particularly like doing anyway, when you go out on the street and you have to convince people that you're from BBC News and will they say something for the bulletins, and they just see you there with a phone and they think you're a vlogger. But apart from that, no one has ever had an issue with the fact that I've turned up to film on a phone. They're just sort of curious about it. It's good for discrete filming. So sometimes you're filming somewhere where you are allowed to film, but it might just be a bit awkward to have the camera out. But everyone's so used to seeing people film with a phone that that's not such a big issue. Yeah, you can film 4K, you can do slow-mo. It's also great for taking stills, the phone. And it's, it does save people money. If you've got a phone already, then you don't have to invest in buying a camera kit. And when you travel, like if you're going on a journey by plane somewhere, you can have it in the plane with you. You don't have to put it in the hold. So you're not paying excess for that. So I think I've kind of been busking it a bit, but I think I've gone over most of my key takeaways. But yeah, actually the only one I'd add is at the end, which is about age. Because when I started out in journalism, I was about 26 really, so that's probably older than a lot of you. And then when I was like early 30s, I was still at a point where I thought I've not got to where I want to be at all. But then you've always got a bit more time than you think. So later on in my 30s, then I was picking up the skills and doing other things. And I definitely believe it doesn't matter what age you are. If you've got the ability to do something, if you've got the imagination to come up with the idea, then it doesn't matter if you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s, just irrelevant what age you are. And if someone came up to me and said, I've just started filming on my phone, I've seen some of the stuff you do, I'm 75, will you take a look at this? If I thought it was a brilliant story they'd done, a brilliant video, I would applaud them and help them to do more. I would never say to someone, oh yeah, it's too late to do that. So you're not too young and you're not too old to do it. Don't think about age, just think, can you do it? And yeah, that's it really, but I'm ready for questions as and when they come in.
Thank you very much, Dougal. That was fantastic. We've had some really enthusiastic people asking quite a lot of questions. So yeah. I'll just run through some very detailed ones. So here's one from Corinne Podger, who I suspect you might know.
Yes.
It's a great presentation. I see you're set in Filmic Pro to 50 FPS. Why not just 25?
That's a very technical question. The weird thing is, even though it seems quite techie to be doing all this Mojo filming, I'm only techie up to a point. I quite like it, but I do get to the point where if it just looks good to me, then and I know that it's got out on TV or it's gone out online and it works, and I just do it. I'm not sure about this, but I suspect it looks slightly richer when you filmed in 50 rather than 25. So it would take quite a detailed explanation to go into it, but you can either film progressive or interlaced. And stuff on a computer is progressive, whereas when stuff goes out on TV, it's interlaced. And interlaced means it's like kind of half a picture on different lines, but it goes out so fast that it kind of tricks the eye into thinking that it's a complete picture. Whereas progressive, if I understand it right, is it's like a complete picture every single time. So normally, if you film progressive in 25, which is how it's normally done, you would never, for example, film a football match that way, because when things are moving very quickly, it would look kind of juddery. It's not quite as fast as interlaced. But when you film 50 progressive, what I've found is that you get the richer, nicer picture, but also it's able to keep up with a lot of the movement. So when I look at it on my timeline, and in my edit, I think it looks good. How experts better than me will know by the time it's gone out on TV whether it still has the benefits of that 50p progressive look. I don't know. Also, even when you put it on social media, some platforms would keep it in 50p, so you'd keep the benefits, but others reduce it anyway. So you might say, what was the point of filming it in that quality if it's going out at a lesser rate? But also, I don't always film in 50. Sometimes it's 25. At the moment, it's 50. It doesn't seem to affect the memory space too much, so I kind of go with it. But I'm not the super expert on that, so someone else probably knows more than me.
Okay, great. Kate Arkless Gray says, if you were budgeting for a decent setup, how much do you think you'd want to spend? As beginners, is it best to save up and buy the good kit? Which bits can we perhaps skimp and save on?
Do you think that means assuming it's a smartphone kit, or is she saying would you do smartphone or a different kind of camera?
Mic and the rig, I would imagine.
Mic and yeah, I would say definitely get a good microphone, and that is expensive. So basically, I got to be careful not to recommend particular ones, but I'm not endorsing anything. But if you buy, for example, the Shure MV88 Plus one, it is definitely good. And it comes with, you don't need to then buy an adapter. You get the microphone and it will go into both an iPhone and an Android. It's got the two sort of connections that come with it. So I don't even know the price of that. I think it is quite expensive, but it would kind of give you everything. The route I've gone, what I also have, and you've seen in those pictures, is quite an expensive microphone that was about £100, and it's a good quality kind of radio one. So that's about 100 quid. And then you buy the Rode IXLR or similar kind of adapter, which is about 90 quid. Either way you do it, you're going to spend about £180 on the sound kit. But other than that, and the rig is very cheap. That's, I don't know, about £50 or something. Maybe you can even get one second hand. Then apart from that, you just need the phone. So okay. there's not too much more to do.
Light? Would you need any lighting?
Well, if you're trying to, yeah, I mean, a light is very cheap as well. They're about £25, but most of the time I'm trying to keep the peripherals, the equipment, to a minimum. So I've always got a light in my bag. But to be honest, it's quite rare the occasion that I take it out. The phones are quite good at dealing with low light. If I had, the latest iPhone, which I wish I did, but I can't afford it myself, and work hasn't bought it for me. But they've got even better at dealing with low light. So that's even less need of one. But I definitely have it for some occasions if it is very, very dark. But in general, if your eyes can see it, then you're usually okay. And my other principle is this is in one of the blogs I tweeted about. I like it to be as natural as possible. And if you stick a light on something, you can make it very beautiful, and you can spend ages doing 3-point lighting and stuff, and it will look great. But I'm more going for sort of faster, natural. This is how it would be in real life kind of look, as long as it's not so dark that it just looks absolutely terrible and unappealing.
Okay, people are asking about tips for ensuring the contributor's eye line is natural during interviews, and then somebody else asks something similar. Where do you tell the interviewee to look where you're filming on your phone? Look at you or look at the phone?
It depends. So, for example, I was filming this morning. Depends on what style you want. I would do a series called CEO Secrets for BBC Business, and for that we want people looking down the barrel, and it's meant to be a very personalised video, a kind of personal feel. And quite a lot of documentaries use that technique. So for that, I would just hold up the camera to them and say, "Can you make sure you're looking here? That's where the lens is." And then and sort of imagine you're doing a Skype call or something. If I'm doing an interview in a, when the person's looking off camera, your arms can get a bit tired, but I'm holding it sort of here, and and I hold the camera at my eye line, and I just maintain eye contact with the person. And sometimes their eye can drift over to look at themselves in the to look at the camera, and I have to sort of remind them, no, you're speaking to me. So then the problem actually is for me, because I'm going like this, I'm speaking to them, keeping it human, keeping eye contact, but every now and again I need to glance at the phone to make sure that my arm hasn't drifted up or down and they're out of shot. So I'm sort of holding it like this.
Okay, great. Andrew Mann asked 2 questions. Do you ever produce pieces where you're not featured, seen or heard asking questions? That's the first question. And 2, how do you coax shorter, more soundbite type replies, especially from experts, scientists? Do you have a technique for that? So that's sort of a slightly different.
Yeah. Yes, I do make quite a few where I'm not in it. So for example, that CEO Secrets one I talked about just now that was filming this morning, that's just people telling their story, looking into camera. Sometimes I do ones where it's just kind of BBC graphic text on the screen and I'm sort of collecting the shots. But I suppose my favorite style is the kind of mini doc ones where I'm filming it and I'm showing myself going on a bit of a personal journey. And an important thing for me is I love voicing them. And I think it takes a human to tell a human story. And that's why I love doing the voiceover. So I guess I do prefer it because, I mean, I've usually found the story and it's an original story. So you want to be the person telling it. But in any job in news, you can't just be doing your own thing all the time. So I'm luckily enough trusted quite a lot to find my original stories and make them. But also I'm helping other colleagues sometimes, filming stuff for them, editing pictures that come into the building. So I'm not doing that all the time. And then in terms of getting sound bites out of people, if you know the magic formula for that, then you'll be a very successful person. But in general, my strategy is just be patient and collect lots of material. And when you're recording, you're always kind of mentally, I am anyway, in the edit suite, and you've got 1 ear out just thinking, can I use that? Can I use that? Do they have to be in vision all the time, or can I add a few pictures to get the 2 bits I need? And have I got those bits? But if somebody's nervous, then if you start saying to them, that was great, but can you just make it much, much shorter? Or no, too long again, make it 2 sentences. The more instructions you give them, the more nervous they get, and it can be kind of self-destructive. So probably from experience, I've learned if you just be very, very patient, let people say more and more, and eventually they'll probably say a version without realizing it, that something clicks in your ear and you say, yep, that's the one I can use.
Great. So Iris and Claire are both asking, what do you use to edit on?
Yeah, so I edit on Final Cut on my MacBook, and I take my MacBook with me whenever I go out filming. And there's 2 reasons I do that. One, because I'm making stuff for BBC, they've made certain templates and bits of software that allow me to reversion things very easily. So when I film a story, I always say by the end, I love the story at the beginning, and by the end I've fallen out of love because I've done like 10 versions of it. So you're making a website version, a Facebook version, an Instagram version, a clean version for languages, and TV version, endless versions, some vertical, some horizontal, some square. And we do have some software to help us do that, and it's mainly designed to work with Final Cut, and likewise a lot of the idents and the graphics and the stuff you see on the screen. The other reason, so that's one reason. The other reason is because there are some really good apps for filming, for editing on your phone, like Luma Touch and other ones as well. But for me, I just find I spend ages editing. I might be like 6 or 8 hours at least editing something that I filmed, and I don't want to spend that long on a small screen. I don't want to be doing it touch screen and pinching and stuff. I would much rather do it with a mouse than on the much bigger screen of of a MacBook. So that's my preference. But there are some people who do manage to do everything on the phone and they get very good results, or they transfer it to an iPad and they want to do it on an iPad. Some people do that as well.
Oliver asks, have you got any opinion on mobile gimbals?
Yeah, again, I tweeted this, and I think it's the last one that I tweeted in thread, that what I love is the pocket gimbal, because for a while I tried the other gimbals, which are ones that you put your phone into them. So it looks like a kind of catapult, and then you put the phone like that, and then it electronically stabilizes it. And I found those really faffy to use because there'd have to be a Bluetooth connection with the phone and the holders and the gimbal, so they worked in tandem, but they would like fail to connect, and I couldn't work out what was happening. And when you're filming, you just don't want things to go wrong because it's stressful and it's embarrassing with the people there. So I got tired of using them. But someone showed me a pocket gimbal, and when I saw that, my eyes popped out of my head, and they're brilliant. I could actually, as I talk, I'll just see if I can get it out of my bag. But the good thing about them is the camera is integrated, so it doesn't have to speak to the phone. There's no Bluetooth, and it films in 4K. It's very, very smooth, and what it's good for is showing off big locations. So again, there's lots of different brands. This is DJI one. I don't know if you can see this. So that's what it is, and it's about the size of an umbrella handle. And it also does this one. You can see it spin. You can do selfies and stuff with it. I don't use it for that, but yeah, it's just if you go to a big location, you want to show it off. As you move around like this, it's stabilizing the shot, filming 4K. And I used in that film we saw about the Wigs. I got a few shots using this at the time. So that's the gimbal that I do like, and it's so small, it doesn't take any room in the kit bag, and the battery lasts for absolutely ages.
Great. Francesca asks, do you record radio packages while you're gathering for your content? Do you use any extra kit or consider anything differently?
I don't use extra kit, but yes, I do record radio packages as well, and I love doing the radio. Yes, you have to record extra things because you have to record some like wild track and nice noises from where you are in location. And sometimes I'll record that separately, or other times I can just grab it from the rushes. So for example, if I've been filming a machine at a recycling factory and it's making a really nice kind of da-doom sound, I might record it separately on my onto the phone, or I might just say, look, I can grab the audio from the soundbite from the rushes when I was filming that. And what I find is that in the setup I've showed you, because I'm using a very good microphone, it's recording very high quality sound, and it's absolutely fine for radio packages. And my radio packages go out in world service, no problem. And a lot of them have run on Radio 4 as well. So the quality is very good. And the slightly weird thing that I do is I actually edit my radio packages from my video edit. So in Final Cut, even though it's designed for video, it's not designed for audio. I just think rather than make a new project, I know where all the material is in Final Cut in my video. Now I'm just going to kind of close my eyes and just imagine that it's a sound piece, and I'll and then do a completely different edit based on radio, but still using some of the sounds I've recorded, or perhaps a few extra things that I've done. And sometimes as well, if I can just get this out. So if I take my rig apart a bit, so I'm not having it on the rig, I just plug this like that. Then I can do a radio interview this way with someone. You can use any app, I suppose, for that. I use one called Rode, which is a free recorder app. And again, it gives you a sound level. And if you know a radio person, you know about Marantz recorders. For me, this kind of replaces the Marantz. You're just recording onto here, really good sound quality. And the benefits are as well that once it's saved in your library, you can email it to someone, or Bluetooth it to your MacBook, or put it in the cloud, so you've got a backup straight away. But yeah, I do a lot of separate radio recording as well.
Fred asks, do you have a separate channel like Vimeo or YouTube where you post your work? You're great at sharing via Twitter feed, but I'm sure I miss things. So he's obviously keen to see more.
Oh yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, Twitter I do. Basically, I haven't got time to put things everywhere. I've started to put some stuff up on YouTube, but I'm probably not as much as I should. But I'm probably most active on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and occasionally I'll put stuff on YouTube. So yeah, I do have a channel on it. It's just Dougal Shaw, but I only occasionally put things on it. I'll try and do more. Thanks.
Tarek says, do you have any advice for filming landscapes for vertical on IGTV?
Well, I don't really. It's hard. Basically, it's one of my pains that I just have to go through. That when I do my first edit of a story, it's horizontal because I filmed it horizontal, and the first thing I'm thinking about is the digital video that will go on the website and on the BBC News app, and then I have to make a set. Then from that, I have to make my other versions. So I need to make a vertical version for Facebook because the BBC News has decided in the last couple of years that they want only vertical on Facebook, which personally I don't agree with, but I have to do that. And then that becomes the Instagram version with a few changes. So what I find is that, yeah, it's annoying because I haven't framed things to work on Instagram. You can't frame things to work in different formats, really. However, most of the time I do find that in some ways it's liberating when you're doing the vertical version because you filmed it horizontal, but in the edit you can kind of move it around and say, right, I want to move from here suddenly to over here, and you can kind of make things work. But it is a compromise. And if in an ideal world, I would go out and have the time, the luxury of time to say, right, I'm going to finish my main film now. I'm going to film it again, but this time I'm going to film it natively vertical and I'll even make things look quite cool using the fact it is vertical. I could really make a play of that and do some creative decisions knowing it's vertical. But in practice, that doesn't happen because I'm already trying to film a report that's going to work on TV and website. I'm thinking about the radio version. I'm thinking about taking stills to the website. That eventually your brain just runs out of space and there's only so much you can do.
Okay, and I'll make this the last question because
Yeah.
You're probably getting very hoarse now. This is from Evan. In terms of being creative with shots, how can you be more creative with shots that are a bit out of the box rather than the usual angles or zooms?
Well, like I said, the phone is so light and small, you can stick it in some really funny places. But the thing that I've most enjoyed recently, and this you'd almost need a separate talk for this, but again, if you look at the tweet I did, the thread, in the last post, I talk about the pocket gimbal that I showed you and the 360 camera. So I'll just quickly get it out. The 360 camera, there's lots of different kinds, but again, it's very small. It just looks like this, but you can have it on a selfie stick. But for me, this is a way to get really different shots that are out of this world and think in a different dimension. So if you read the blog post I did about it, basically you're capturing stuff instead of just, like in 16:9 or as like one shot, you're catching everything in a sphere so that when you come to the edit, you can do crazy pans and tilts. You can just tell the camera to kind of look anywhere in the edit. And so that recently, that's what I found gives me the most surprising shots. And when in the one about the guys of Wigs, you could see those moments where it's like a drone taking off and it went from their eye level to showing the shot from above their heads, both outside and inside. And that was all done by having this 360 camera on a stick and just kind of holding it and moving it around, waving it like a magic wand. And what the software also does is it manages to really cleverly eliminate the stick. So you don't see the stick holding it. It's just like it's a drone kind of buzzing around. So that's my top tip for creative shots at the moment. But yeah, I've got to go quite soon now, so that probably is time for an end. But if in general, if people want to like tweet me questions or DM or stuff like that, I can't always reply straight away, but I'll try and get back to you at some point.
Thank you so much, Dougal. That's been a fantastically practical session, which has obviously been enjoyed by tons of people. Anyone who's on Twitter, don't forget to retweet and like our tweets. Thank you at J Schofield Trust. Thanks again, Dougal. And
pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.